to my channel. Today we're going to talk about something that I find super exciting. We got more information last week about the Sword and Shield games, and some of the stuff that was revealed in there were not only Galarian forms with like new evolutions and stuff, but another rival of ours was announced and the supposed evil team. So in this video we're going to talk about Marnie and Team Yell and what could their evil plot actually be. But they're super edgy, super punk, and it's super fitting because the UK kind of invented the whole genre that is punk. And you can really see in their outfits, like they're extreme sports fans, yes, but they wear all like the leather jackets and the studs and the face paint and all and the mohawks and all that good stuff too. In the description it says that Team Yell will actually try to stop other rival trainers at every gym stage to prevent them from like outshining Marnie, because they want Marnie to end up winning the whole Pokemon League and Galar. And it's really meant to be funny. It's meant to be like a comic relief that these are extreme like sports fans kind of thing. But every now and then Marnie tells them to stop and like says that this isn't the right thing, or can convince them to leave you alone for a minute. Which, like, after reading that description, I kind of like really sat down and thought about that kind of relationship dynamic and wondered how well that actually fit in with the whole punk woman vibe that she's supposed to admit. And I also kind of wanted to get into this idea of like charisma and like who is Marnie gonna actually be and who our Team Yell is supposed to be. So just backtracking, for people who don't know, there's a new mechanic introduced in Sword and Shield that relies heavily on charisma. Basically, they're really adapting the Pokemon gyms and the trainers and everything else to be very reflective of sports. So to be able to compete in this league, you actually have to get sponsored by certain companies or other people. For example, Chairman Rose has sponsored people in the past. The champion now, he was sponsored, and he was also sponsoring Beat, I believe, the other rival that was revealed in Sword and Shield. But anyway, yeah, you're meant to be sponsored. So also, not only do you have to be skilled in battles, but you also have some sort of charismatic personality or other way of attracting people in. So far, we haven't seen any real big sports fans for any of our other rivals besides Marnie. If you look at the gym, there's obviously fans in the stand, and I would presume they'd be cheering on like their local gym leader the same way people here would cheer on their local sports team. But Team Yell takes it to an extreme. And you could say, well, you know, that's just how sports fans are. I live in the US, and I live in Boston, which is one of the most radical sports cities in the US, I would say, where the fans get super intense. Like for the last Super Bowl and the Pats game, the roads were nuts. People were crazy. For the World Series, people were crazy here too. They get really passionate, and there's been instances in the US of people like burning cars or destroying property based on the results of a sports game, you know, which can still fit into this sort of punk culture or this sort of like destructive protest culture that Pokemon's trying to emit. But again, when looking at Marnie, I still think it's a little bit different, just because for some reason we haven't seen ourselves or any of the rivals have other super crazy fans. And I think the fact that Marnie is a girl, but not only is she a girl, but she kind of emits this e-girl persona, is why Team Yell is going to play an interesting role in Pokemon. What is an e-girl? When I was looking up definitions to provide like actual context, a lot of them were pretty crude. But basically, an e-girl is basically any woman or any girl or feminine person who has an online audience or online presence or her own personality. A lot of these personalities involve building a conceived relationship with people online, or like what their fans would be. This can go the same for men too with e-boys, but there is a difference between an influencer and e-girl, e-boy, or whatever. Basically, an influencer is someone who's paid to go out and who has like a extravagant lifestyle that people want to emulate one day, and it's like hashtag goals. But an e-boy or e-girl is supposed to be something that's relatable, the kind of person who's normally staying in their room, or you know, is more introverted so that they can better relate to their own fan base or audience. Even if that's not their personality, that's the way they're intending to come off as. But yeah, I mean, we obviously can't tell that's Marnie from this video from the shot because we don't know. But she definitely, at least visually, carries a lot of that e-girl aesthetic. A lot of that online aesthetic is meant to be somewhat gothic or like a soft goth. Even though like her fans are extremely punk, she just, for me, doesn't emulate a lot of punk tendencies. For example, at least in the context of British wave punk, it was meant as a protest to counterculture. So you had these people who listened to extreme rock and roll music, but also, you know, threw over trash cans or damaged property to fight the man and fight the system. The fact that Marnie discourages her followers from doing this, kind of, for me, suggests that she's not into the whole punk persona that she admits, and maybe that's just like the way she likes to dress or the way she likes to style herself, or based on the Pokemon she uses. The one we've seen her use so far is the newly revealed one, which is like electric and dark, which makes sense. It's something that's very cute, very soft, but it has a dark side to it, which could easily fit her personality. The thing is about Team Yell too is that they may seem innocent, they might be the comic relief. When I first saw this, I really thought that they would be more like a Team Skull kind of trope where they're meant to be seen as annoying bad guys or whatever, but there's really a sinister, evil organization behind the scenes, and that could very well be true. I know a lot of people have still speculated that. I myself believe that more than the options that I'm going to give you today. But I thought it's good to see and kind of speculate like what this really means, just because online it equated them to Team Rocket, and Team Rocket is indeed an evil team, first and foremost. So they're not really meant to be the comic relief. I mean, other than Jesse and James. I mean, Jesse and James are the comic relief of Team Rocket, but like as a whole, the organization isn't. So basically, I had two lines of thoughts for this, and both of these options would be a very interesting political and social commentary on the Pokemon's part of it, which I think could possibly be refreshing. I know most of their political ideas that they put in their games are more so based on the environment, and this game will definitely have a lot of those elements to it as well. But the fact that it mentions this sort of like influencer persona or e-girlness, or like the fact that this fandom is only associated to a female idol, could really be a great opener for a social critique. And I say that just because it is very, very dangerous for a woman to be online, period. It's dangerous for a woman to have this online persona. Recently, at least here in the US, there was a case of a 17-year-old who had an online audience who was, you know, stalked and murdered and even decapitated by one of her fans. And it's absolutely sickening how far people's like projected relationship onto these idols can be. I mean, celebrity worship has always been a thing, but there's even people who take things like K-pop idols or J-pop idols way too seriously, or at least I think way too seriously, to the fact where they start like fights with people who disagree about their favorite members of a band. And we can see this element of idol worship here. And to equate it to this whole sports theme is also interesting, because there's definitely people who take sports way too seriously, like damaging property, like I mentioned, during the Super Bowl or whatever. And this projected like radicalization of that is just way too much. And I can see that being conceived in an evil team. Marnie constantly tells them like, hey, this isn't the right way to go about this. I just want to win, you know, on my own. And even though they always cheer for her, which is a positive thing, what happens if they get tired of her saying no to like how they're interfering or how they're trying to help her? Could they potentially hurt Marnie? Could they potentially hurt other trainers or other people in their team? You know, could they go and become even more radicalized as the game progresses to the point where they're stealing people's Pokemon or really, really trying to shut down the league? You know, it's interesting to think about it in that way, to see a team progressively get worse and worse as it goes on, which kind of mirrors this whole fandom online and the way people latch onto these people based on their own preconceived notions of who they are. And when they find out that person isn't really what they're like in real life, or doesn't really have that sort of fantasized relationship with them, they can react violently. And I think because it's fitted on a female rival, it makes it even more like through that gender lens and perspective. You could say that you know, that sort of gendered element of it isn't there at all, and it's literally just her telling them that this is the wrong way to protest the league. Maybe her point of winning the league is meant so that she can deconstruct an unfair system, or a perceived unfair system for whatever reason, and she's trying to infiltrate inward. And instead of demonstrating these mass violent protests or mass inconveniences like her fans do, she's trying to teach them to be more peaceful and strategic in their approaches. Which is fine, and is definitely a conversation, at least in the US, that's been going on for a long time, but that is in itself another political critique, because effectively you're trying to tell someone how to demonstrate their right to protest, right? In the punk rock genre, you're meant to be radical in your demonstrations, and a lot of movements do call for that depending on the situation, and whereas other situations call on more peaceful action and cooperating with the system as well. So again, that could be a more politicized version of it, and maybe because of that they revolt against Marnie. Maybe it's not necessarily the idol worship part that gets her in, but it's the political radicalization of these groups, which would still be interesting too. Regardless, either way, that's the only way I could really see them becoming like an evil organization. They're probably just rowdy people, and everyone thinks that Chairman Rose is really shady, and he'll probably end up being the shady one. But at least I thought it'd be nice to share this theory with you. I'm going to go ahead and put in another video I watched that kind of explains the punk culture a little bit better than I did. I think it's interesting that, at least I would be hopeful that Pokemon would be willing to take these stances and to address these sorts of issues that are going on, especially if they want to employ other mechanics in their RPG game like charisma. I mean, plenty of other RPGs have charisma-based mechanics too, and they've kind of done that in the past with like contests and the Pokestar Studios and movies. But a lot of those tend to be centralized around femininity in itself. You know, you shouldn't stereotype because anybody could like doing contests, but I remember being really, really into it, especially with all the theatrics and costuming. And associating this charisma with femininity really, really makes it hit home that this is supposed to be something that is gendered, or at least it could be a gender-specific issue, especially when you're trying to gain influencers online. This isn't to say that violence against men or famous men aren't a thing, or the same stalking doesn't persist, because it definitely does. But I think I think it's more widespread amongst women, just because violence against women tends to be in greater numbers anyway. So it's not really a stretch to think that this is something that's online as well. If you like this video and you like these sort of political perceptions on Pokemon or like game theories, I'm thinking about doing more on my channel. I have one that was released around the 4th of July talking about Pokemon inspirations based on gender and race issues in the United States, specifically during the Civil War. So if you like that, you know, I'll leave it down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I really, really appreciate this. Feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Okay, thanks. Bye.